Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop the kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a lovely Thursday morning here in suburban Chicago, and I'm pleased to be talking to you about board games today. The weather has turned a little bit and it's actually gotten a little cool. I'm wearing a sweater, like a zip-up hoodie. My hands are a little brisk. It's great. Loving it. I hope that your September is going well. I expect this episode will still make the September series, but not by much. I'm talking to you today about a week after the Chicago Protospiel. Protospiel is a game development con where everybody who comes is either a game developer or sometimes a publisher or often a playtester, somebody who just wants to try out new stuff. The way it works is you sign up for a badge and you can go anytime at all for up to 3 days. The Chicago Protospiel goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it provides an opportunity for playtesting at a really rigorous level. It's generally a very productive experience in my mind, and I'm really excited to be there. I wanted to talk to you today about our experiences playtesting 3 different games that we brought with us. This might be the first you're hearing of some of these games, so I'll give you a back-of-the-envelope introduction to what they are. But mostly I want to talk about the experience of playtesting with strangers, and I think that'll probably take up my full time today. I will also do another episode at some later date detailing my experiences playtesting other people's games. I'm not going to talk about the games in particular because you never know how public people want to be about the games they're developing. In particular, I don't want to share negative thoughts about particular games because that's not cool. But I am interested in sharing the experience and learning from the things that we experienced at the Protospiel, whether they are positive or negative, for those of you who are interested in game design at some level. But first I thought I would talk about the 4 playtests we had, or three and a half, of our games at Chicago Protospiel. Well, okay, so we actually brought a bunch of games with us, and my design partner Rob was able to play some games when I wasn't there. So those things are not part of what we're talking about here. But in particular, this game, this discussion that I'm having is about. So I want to share our experiences playtesting 3 of the games that we brought to Chicago Protospiel. On Friday, we got to playtest a party. It's not a party game, a group game. I don't know, a smaller group game. It's not a Euro per se. It's mostly a bluffing game called First Against the Wall. In First Against the Wall, you play an oligarch trying to survive the coming revolution. You are incredibly wealthy, and your goal is to not be the first against the wall when the revolution comes. So, of course, the first against the wall is the player who has the most money, so you win the game if you're second against the wall. Or, second place. So the idea of the game is each game you're going to select an action from this sort of action wheel, and you're going to choose a target. And the target represents another wealthy person with whom you are negotiating or with whom you are communicating. And the idea is that the two together result in some change in culture. So you have this wheel that you select from that picks your target, and it picks how much money you're committing to one of several actions, and then everyone reveals their actions at the same time and they resolve, and the person and everybody's wealth moves up or down a little bit. There's a board in the middle that represents society's wealth, and as the wealthy people drain more and more from that, then society gets more and more angry, and as soon as the last token is removed from that board, the game ends, and the person who's the wealthiest is killed, and the person who has second most money wins. So that's the idea of the game. The playtest was really interesting So here's a couple things. Example number one of something odd that can happen in a playtest that isn't something that happens to you when you're playing the game as a designer. We had 4 people who took a really long time to play the game. So each round there would be somebody who would contemplate their decisions for much longer than is usual among players of this game. So whereas most of our test games of First Against the Wall go from 15 to 25 minutes, this game took like 40 to 45. And one of the things we discovered is that 40 to 45 is too long for this game. It got to be pretty long. It seemed like our playtesters got a little bored with it, in part because the game took twice as long as it's supposed to, and it came down to one player taking too much time. I don't think that it's right to say have a rule where you have a limited amount of time, but it wouldn't hurt to add in the high pressure variant, or where if 3 people have presented their held their cards out like they're done picking, or their selectors, and the 4th player hasn't done that yet, perhaps they get to the count of 3 to hold theirs out, and if they don't do so, then the group gets to decide, do they gain $1 or lose $1 from the middle. This would help with the accelerating timer of the game, but it would also then force that 4th player to make a decision quickly, which would help in terms of the speed. So the game is designed for 3 to 6 players. You can't play a 2-player game of it. But even I don't think it works great at 3. It's okay, but I think it needs more testing at 3 to really see how well it goes. That said, we've had a lot of fun with that 3. The interesting part of the game for me is the instinct that the game provides or the intuition the game provides in terms of how you play can be difficult. And occasionally we'll have players who just can't get their head around how the game works. So I think we need to revise our theme a little bit to help make that a little smoother. So that was First Against the Wall. The second game that we tested and got pretty good feedback on was the game that's primarily mine, or was mine. The original design was mine. Both games Rob and I work on pretty heavily, but the core of this one was mine, and that's Something Wakes in the Forest, it's called. Something Wakes in the Forest is a area control game, I guess, with hand management elements in which you play evil demons in another dimension trying to come into ours, and you do so by manipulating these people at a lake. The lake being sort of like in those horror movies where there's a haunted lake, and people who go to stay in the cabins around the lake find themselves in dire situation. You are the thing that makes that situation dire. At least that's the idea of the game. It's a Euro game. There's a little bit of luck, but not much, and it's input randomness, so it's luck that happens before you make your decisions. It's not output randomness, which is luck after you make your decisions. And I've wrestled for a while with the end condition of the game. I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I've really become happy with the solution that I found at Protospiel and we tested. So in a previous test, we've tried having this end condition where you put points into the end condition of the game, and and that leads toward the end of the game. And if you put points toward the game ending, you get 2 points for every bit of energy you've put over there. You get 1 point for every bit of energy you have for yourself. I think the balance of how much energy you should start with and how the energy moves around needs to be tweaked a little bit. But generally, there was a good assessment of how things were working for the players. However, one of the comments was that the end was a little predictable, and I completely believe or agree that the end was predictable. Also, some of the comments that I've gotten in feedback from previous playtests is that the area control part of the game was not strong enough. Now, I would say in this game it was pretty strong. it worked well. But ultimately, the scoring track was worth too much. The scoring track was worth too many points, perhaps. So I think that the tweak needs to be either raising the value of the personal points a little bit would help, or one thing I really think I need to do is add in the end game mechanism with this gate. So one of the idea of the game is that there's some sort of portal or gate between worlds that's slowly opening, and you can contribute to the opening of that gate such that when the gate finally opens, the player with the most influence gets to go through the gate, gets to be the one that emerges into the world. And you gain 2 points of influence for every thing you put into the gate opening, and you have 1 point of influence for every piece you have left in your pool. That said, the gate was too powerful. One of the players said, well, it seems like the obvious thing is just always put energy into the gate. So I needed to reduce the amount of energy they have available to them so that you have to spend some time gaining energy, building your engine, before you can dump all your points in the gate. But then I also wanted an alternate win condition that requires a different focus and thus splits attention for both the people going for that other focus and the people trying to prevent it. So the idea is that before the gate opens, there's a tear, a fissure in reality leading to the other dimension. And you can just win the game if you're able to perform a summoning, which is where your opponent, where your minions summon you through the gate or through the fissure instead of opening the gate. And so there's a bunch of things you have to do in order to do a summoning. You have to have control of the area where the fissure is. You have to have your talisman there. You have to have 2 minions, one that matches each of your 2 major sins, and you have to have enough energy equal to the remaining spaces in the gate. It's like in the last round, control of the fissure could be really strong, because it would be very cheap to open the gate. But as soon as someone opens the gate, then control of the fissure doesn't matter. So there's this nice tension where people may have to put some energy toward either completing that summoning or blocking other people from completing it, which may then reduce the validity of opening the gate and winning that way. It seems to make an interesting tension that I did not test, because I just wanted to test the new versions of some of these other things I put in. But people were very positive about the feedback that we got, or positive about the game, and I got good feedback. So the test of Something Wakes went very well, and I feel like I'm drilling in on a pretty particular set of answers. Unfortunately, the game is incredibly art intensive, so I have a long way to go before it's going to be ready for prototype stage, but I think it's worth experimenting with as we continue. So that's my first step of my Protospiel experience. I have one more game to tell you about, and then I'll tell you about some experiences playing other games as well, some lessons learned about playtesting. In the meantime, let me know what's been your latest playtesting experience. What games have you been playing lately? What lessons have you learned from your playtesting that you've been doing? Hop over to our guild 3269 on BoardGameGeek and let me know. Or you can email me, Brendan, at Rattlebox Games, to let me know that way too. Thanks for listening, and I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.